Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, a new poll looks at what Arizonans consider the state's top priorities. We'll hear about a new count of the Phoenix area's homeless population, and we'll have a preview of this year's annual Phoenix Art Detour. Those stories next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. The Morrison-Cronkite Quarterly Poll was launched today. The poll is the work of ASU's Morrison Institute for Public Policy and the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication. Here now to discuss the results of the inaugural survey is the Morrison Institute's David Doherty, who directs the statewide poll. Good to see you. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Ted. Glad to be here.
This is the first now in a series of quarterly polls, collaboration between the two. How this all come together?
Yet we thought there was a void for polling in the state. When you want to look at the opinions and attitudes of people in the state, we needed to have some consistent way of gathering that information. So we decided we would launch a quarterly poll in collaboration with Cronkite so we could continue to keep decision makers and the general population sort of knowledgeable about what's going on in the state.
And the focus now of this first poll was?
We focused really on what we thought were issues the legislature would want to pay attention to. So we did some work on what are the priorities in the minds of the citizens, what are they looking at. Did a fair number of questions on education, did some on water, did some on immigration. So we tried to cover what are really the hot button issues for the state.
And I want to get to some of those results in a second, but as far as the poll itself, who was asked, what kind of subgroups, what do we got here? Yeah,
we did 750 interviews. They were randomly selected. They had to be adults living in the state. 40% of the interviews were cell phone interviews. They were given the choice of answering the questionnaire in either English or Spanish. We then weighted the data. Dr. Eric Hedberg does the weighting for us to make sure that when all was said and done, our 750 respondents look exactly like the adult population in the state so that they can represent the attitudes and opinions of everybody in the state.
And delineation of age, political party, these
sorts of things?
Same
balance, where we balance for all those things.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get started here. Prioritizing issues, highest priorities, and these are all with very high numbers. There are three. Talk to us about these.
Sure. The two highest, which come as no surprise, are education and water. We've done polls in the past. Education consistently drifts to the top. Water is always, you live in the desert, everybody cares about water. The other one was law and order issues that are a big deal. They were just a half step below the top two, but those are the three that rose to the top. And I guess if I had to predict before we did the poll, those are the three I would have guessed.
It sounds like in terms of parsing out the numbers here, the better educated, the less happy you are with the school system in Arizona.
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. We've been looking at K through 12 education in polls for the 5 years I've been here. We've done it half a dozen times. Invariably, we get the same results. We get unhappiness with K through 12 at some level. We get most people saying we need to put more money into it. And that's what we found again. And we found that education rises to the top as the biggest priority for most citizens in this state.
Was there much of a difference between Republicans, Democrats, and independents on education issues?
You know, there is some, but not a great difference in education. When you've got almost 90% of people saying education's a big deal, that doesn't leave many people to say it's not. So you get big numbers for all political parties.
What about Common Core?
Common Core was an interesting question. The way we approached that, we split our sample in two. Half the people we asked whether they approve or disapprove of establishing Common Core in the public schools in Arizona. The second half of the group we described the basic elements of Common Core. A basic curriculum with testing that could compare across schools and across states without using the phrase Common Core.
Right.
What we found, it's not going to come as any surprise to you, I don't suspect, is that if you use the word Common Core, it's been very politicized. And we had, I think, 55% who disapproved of it. If we describe the basic elements of Common Core, what it's trying to accomplish, we had something like 68 or 69% approve it. So much like Obamacare, Common Core has been politicized so that you get sort of a knee-jerk reaction for it or against it.
Right, right.
And that's what we found.
Okay, let's move to mid-level priorities. Things with poverty level seem like big questions here. What kind of results did you get? Yeah,
what happens is, and we started to get some differences by political party with these. When you start to talk about some of the social issues, anytime you ask about kids, you get pretty high approval. Everyone is pretty sensitive about wanting to provide opportunities for kids, opportunities for poor kids in particular. But you start to see some political differences. The Democrats tend to be more approving of what I define as sort of socially based issues. Republicans tend to be more approving of fiscal care, fiscal conservatism. And that's what starts to emerge with those social issues in the center. And the independents fall somewhere in between, because the independents, who are now our largest political party in the state, I guess, kind of fall between, because people from both parties, formerly in both parties, have sort of drifted into that category.
From what I saw of the results, though, it did seem, though, that independents tended to side more closely with Republicans in a lot of these issues.
Yeah, a little bit, although it depended a little bit on the issue. But yeah, you know, if you had to say, are they closer to one party or the other, I would say probably the Republican Party.
So helping kids and families under the poverty level and health education for kids under 4, those were, again, bigger for Democrats than Republicans and independents on both levels.
That is correct.
Health care for those under the poverty level. And you also asked about state public universities. And what was the response there?
They fall into that mid-range category in terms of interest, or in terms of where they prioritize them. You know, we asked a question about, do you think our universities are better than universities in other states? It was worded much more elegantly than that, but that was what we were looking at. And our numbers were okay. They have a reasonably positive feeling about our state universities. We asked the same question about K through 12 education, and they do not have a positive attitude towards that. Yeah, there was a difference.
As far as the lower priorities, the budget deficit, I was surprised to see that in there. State parks and recreation, not surprised. Arts and culture, not really surprised there. The prison system was in a lower priority?
Yeah, and you know, which was a little bit of a surprise to me. I would argue that the prison system sort of operates in the background. It is, unless, you know, as I said to one person, unless someone escapes, no one hardly ever covers it, even though it devours about 11% of the general fund every year. So it's an expensive, we put about $1 billion into that. We put about $770 million into higher education, just to put that in perspective. But the general public doesn't really think much about it, and if they're setting priorities, that's not one of their priorities.
That's interesting. And again, this is something that you think legislators should take a look at to find out priorities?
Yeah, if they're interested in what the general population is thinking about, it's worth their time to take a look at it.
How do you square the idea that some of these things seem so different than what the legislature focuses on, and yet the legislature in and of itself is a poll to a certain degree?
Right. It's interesting. And every elected official, and rightly, and I think they're being honest about it, think education's a big deal, and they want it to be a big priority. But when it comes to funding, it's sort of a conundrum for them. You can't really have a great education system without funding it. And we live in a very conservative state, and taxes and funding is a big deal. And there's a real push and shove there that I think hurts education. I guess from the conservative side, it is a tax issue.
So what do we take from this poll? What do lawmakers take from this poll? What do you take from this poll?
I think what it gives us is a reasonably good feel for what people are thinking about out there. If I could do this again, every time you do a poll, you think, what did I miss? I would have added immigration issues and gun rights to that list of priorities, because those things also come out of the legislature. And those are two we didn't include. Next time I would include them.
Well, with that in mind, when is the next poll, and what would the focus, you think, be?
Yeah, we're doing the next poll. We will probably try to get it into the field, get the interviewing done in April. We haven't talked yet about what we're going to do. We aren't necessarily going to do general population. We may do a subgroup. You know, we may do something on business people, or we may do something on just women, or, you know, it really depends upon what we're trying to get at. We also use the poll to support our research projects that we have going on at Morrison. And so if we're doing a project on domestic violence, we may add some questions on domestic violence. So we use it for that reason as well.
And will there be fewer in the way of broad kind of prioritizing questions and more in the way of yes, no, A, B, or C? Sure,
there'll be some of that. By doing 4 a year, which is really a lot of data, we can pretty much ask anything by the end of the year.
All right. Well, congratulations on the poll. Good to have you here.
Great.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Ted. I appreciate it.
The Maricopa County Association of Governments conducted an annual count of the homeless population in Phoenix today. Joining us now to talk about the effort is Brandy Mead of MAG. Good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for asking me to be here.
So what is all this? Okay, before we even go to there, define homeless. Who are you counting out there?
So this morning we are estimating the number of people who are experiencing homelessness on the street. So we're counting men, women, and children who are living literally on the streets across Maricopa County today.
And regardless of whether they want this kind of lifestyle, whether they've been forced into this kind of lifestyle, you're just counting those in the lifestyle.
Yes, we are. Yes.
Okay, so the methodology, how do you do this?
Well, we work with coordinators across the region, and each of those coordinators helps Maricopa Association of Governments to implement the count. We had about 400 volunteers that spread out across the region. They're assigned to a specific area that they cover, and they have teams of 2 to 3 within their group, and they canvass the area that they're assigned. And not only do we count the number of people who are homeless, but we also survey them so that we can better understand homelessness, and asking a variety of questions about demographic information as well as characteristics.
So you're looking on the streets, in the shelters, these sorts of places?
Yes, we do a shelter count as well.
Okay. What about those? I mean, I would imagine there are some in the homeless community who don't want to be found and don't want to be talked to. How do you handle that?
Yes, there are some that are hidden or who don't want to participate in the survey. So we do ask volunteers to go out and look at their area that they were assigned prior to the count so that they can get a better feel for the area. We do our best job to count those that are on the street, but it's our best estimate. We know that there will be people that are missed simply because we can't find them or because they don't want to be surveyed. So we do the best that we can, but it is an estimate. It's our best estimate of those that are experiencing homelessness.
And as far as the survey is concerned, the questions, obviously not everyone wants to answer questions either, but what are they asked? How many questions?
The survey includes 21 questions, and we ask information. We ask for the person's name and age. We ask for the length of time that they've experienced homelessness. We ask about some medical history questions to understand if there's a disabling condition that they might be experiencing. We ask about drug, alcohol use. Also ask whether or not the individual is a veteran. Also ask if there are other family members that are experiencing homelessness with them.
Why is this being done?
Well, we conduct the point-in-time count on an annual basis, and it helps us to not only know how many people are homeless, but understand the characteristics that led to their homelessness. Helps us to bring in resources to the community. We submit the data to HUD, and we apply for the homeless assistance funding. Each year we receive about $26 million in federal resources. That goes to over 50 programs throughout Maricopa County. Those programs provide housing and supportive services to people who are homeless.
So it is required by the feds for that HUD funding?
It is.
2014, last year, we saw a 33% decrease of those folks sleeping on the street. I think 13% of those in the shelter. For this year, final results not going to be out for a while though, huh?
We expect to have results in May. We're hoping that we'll see another decrease again this year. There are many efforts in place throughout the community to house people as quickly as possible, so we're hoping that we'll continue to see a reduction in the number of people who are homeless, and we'll know more once we start getting the data back, and we'll have those results in May. Well,
and last question, now that your long day is done and everyone is finished with this, can you tell, can you tell if you got the folks you were looking for? Are people relatively successful this go around?
So I have gotten some feedback since this morning, and the volunteers are saying that they were able to survey people in their assigned locations, and so far it's what we're expecting. All
right. Well, congratulations. It's a long day for you. Congratulations. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Get the inside scoop on what's happening at Arizona PBS. Become an 8 Insider. You'll receive weekly updates on the most anticipated upcoming programs and events. Get the 8 Insider delivered to your email inbox. Visit azpbs.org to sign up today.
Art Detour is a local celebration of the arts that's grown into one of the largest art walks in the country. This year's Art Detour is set for March 7th and 8th with a variety of local artists set to open their studio doors for visitors to take a look. With more on Art Detour, we welcome ArtLink Board President Katrina Kaler and Phoenix painter and sculptor John Randall Nelson. Good to have you both here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right, give me a better definition. What is Art Detour?
Art Detour is the event that started it all, really. Back in 1989, a group of artists, chiefly Beatrice Moore and Tony Zahn, came together and got together and started an art walk in downtown Phoenix. And the detour was to go off the beaten path at the time, away from the institutional, the traditional art destinations in downtown, and explore the streets and then the smaller destinations that you might find along the corridor. But
I remember in those early days, I wasn't there for the first one, but after a few years later, it seemed like there were very few, they were very focused, and almost, I mean, there was nothing on Grand Avenue back then.
No. And ironically, thanks to Beatrice, there is a lot on Grand Avenue these days, but she's still with us, and since then, we've had so many artists move their studios downtown, and we have galleries open, and other businesses get involved along the way.
Where are the hot spots right now for art in Phoenix and for Art Detour?
Right, right. Well, it's the hotspots you hear about are the hotspots you hear about on First Fridays and Third Fridays every month of the year. You'll hear about Roosevelt Row. You'll hear about Grand Avenue. Now the Central Arts District is coming online at Central and McDowell. The Warehouse District is still with us. It was a hot destination back in the day, and now ASU is there with the Herberger Art School and other destinations. So it's throughout downtown.
What does Art Detour mean to you, the artist?
You know, the first time that I opened my studio in downtown Phoenix for Art Detour was 2 decades ago, at least 2 decades ago. One of my first memories was Kevin Johnson walking into the studio, and it was Kevin Johnson's the mayor of Sacramento, but in those days he was actually the point guard for the Phoenix Suns.
You bet.
Kevin brought in his grandparents and his aunts and his uncles and his nephews and his nieces, and there must have been at least 12 Johnsons and relatives. And so I was, you know, just sort of, you know, just really excited because I'd never met Kevin before, and they were asking me about my paintings, and you know, it was just really, really interesting, a lot of fun. It's, you know, artists need audiences, and Art Detour offers that opportunity for us to open up our studios and, you know, invite people in.
What changes for the artist when you do open up your studio? You got to clean it up a little bit, hide this and that, or what?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you absolutely do, because, you know, we're sort of like prisoners in a cell, you know, when we're working away on our projects. Or maybe more like, I don't know, nuns in an abbey or something like that. And so we don't see the light of day often, or at least many of us don't. And yeah, that opportunity to open up and to invite people in and to get that sort of feedback is valuable. It's really a lot of fun.
As far as the event itself, what are the challenges? I know transportation's always a curiosity, if not a challenge. What are you seeing out there?
We've turned that challenge into an asset.
There we go, there we go.
Art Detour, the message of Art Detour is actually linked quite closely with transportation. And downtown is at a point, thanks to light rail, thanks to grid bike share, and thanks to our own hosted trolley tour that we host on a monthly basis for First Fridays, we offer this multimodal connection for people. So even though we have around 100 destinations featured on Art Detour, we help provide these options so people can get around seamlessly.
So someone can go to point A,
yes,
and find a way to get onto a trolley or some sort of mode of transportation and know where to go all throughout downtown Phoenix.
Exactly, exactly. We produce a map that shows where all of these destinations are located by category. That's available online as well, and people, it's an exploration. It's a weekend of exploring downtown.
So, and again, from the artist's point of view, is this an opportunity to sell your work? Do you see this as a selling opportunity?
Yeah, especially for younger artists, I think. I haven't had my studio in downtown Phoenix for about 20 years. I mean, I was active as an artist early on in those early years with Beatrice Moore. In fact, I did the poster this year for Art Detour, but I also did it back in 1992, and it was really kind of exciting to, you know, 2 decades ago,
yeah,
more than 2 decades ago. So it's fun to be involved in that way. I'm now a member of the iLounge Collective, which is on Roosevelt Row. Really great space to go see, and it turns over a number of artists, but it's a group of artists who support each other, and we have a gallery that that basically, well, for Art Detour, it's a group show. So my work's up for that. It just means a lot. Selling, yeah, again, that first sort of time that I opened up, Fritz Scholder came in. Fritz is a painter of some acclaim,
yes,
Arizona acclaim. And in fact, he came in at the same time that Kevin Johnson was there, and I was trying to kind of like scoot Kevin Johnson out so I could talk to Fritz, and Fritz bought a couple of my drawings, I think for maybe $50 a piece or something like that. But those sorts of experiences are really valuable, especially for young artists. But you know, in this sort of a venue, there's artists who have been living and working downtown for you know, 20 years or so, and really accomplished artists that may be locally based, but they show, you know, nationally and internationally.
And with that, we have about 30 seconds left. How has this impacted the Phoenix art scene?
this event? How has
Yes.
it impacted? It provides that cohesion. It's that annual tent pole that we can all look forward to and come together and celebrate where we've been and where we are and where we're going. And it really helps create that connectivity throughout the year. First and third Fridays do that as well, but our detour is the one that kicked it off.
It's kind of the mothership, isn't it?
Exactly.
Well, good luck, and good luck to you as well.
Thank
you both
you.
for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Wednesday on Arizona Horizon, we'll have our weekly legislative update with the Arizona Capitol Times, and we'll hear about the struggles overcome by women in predominantly black Arizona rural communities. It's at 5:30 and 10 on the next Arizona Horizon. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.